My lawyer looked me dead in the eye and said, "Call your parents. Tell them you lost $20 million." I thought he'd lost his mind. I didn't understand it yet, but that one sentence was about to save my life and destroy the people who tried to ruin it. My name is Claire Whitfield. I'm 31 years old, and this is the story of how my own family tried to steal everything I built, and how I made sure they lost far more than they ever gained. I wasn't supposed to be the successful one. That title belonged to my older brother, Daniel. Golden boy, Ivy League MBA, the kind of son my father, Robert Whitfield, bragged about at every country club dinner in Greenwich, Connecticut. I remember being 9 years old, standing in our kitchen with a science fair trophy in my hands. First place. I'd built a working water filtration model out of spare parts from my dad's garage. I ran inside, breathless, looking for my parents. They were in the living room with Daniel, who'd just brought home a B+ on a math test. My father had his arm around him. "That's my boy," he said. "Gonna run this family one day." I stood in the doorway holding my trophy. Nobody noticed. My mother glanced over eventually and said, "That's nice, sweetie. Go wash up for dinner." That was the pattern for 20 years. Daniel's mediocrity was celebrated. My effort was background noise. So when I dropped out of business school to build a software company out of a rented garage in Austin, Texas, my father didn't see ambition. He saw a daughter humiliating the family name, playing pretend at being an entrepreneur, he called it, in front of the entire Thanksgiving table, while Daniel smirked into his wine glass. 8 years later, that pretend company, Databridge Analytics, was valued at $94 million. I owned 60% of it. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I just kept building. But success has a way of making people who ignored you suddenly very, very interested. It started with phone calls. My mother, Linda, calling more often, asking softly how the company was doing, whether I had considered bringing family into the business side. Then Daniel started showing up my office, my apartment, always with a new excuse. A charity gala, a quick coffee, a business plan he wanted my opinion on. I should have seen it for what it was. But you want to believe your family loves you for you, not for what you're worth on paper. The trouble really began the day my father called and asked me, without a hint of irony, to make Daniel co-CEO. "He has the pedigree, Claire," my father said. "The board will respect him. You built something real. But you need someone who can run it." "I've been running it for 8 years," I said, "profitably." "Don't be emotional about this." I said no flat. Final. Within a month, my father stopped taking my calls unless it was to pressure me. My mother called crying, telling me I was tearing this family apart. Daniel started telling mutual friends I was unstable, that the pressure of running a real company had finally gotten to me. Then the real move came. I found out through my company's general counsel, a sharp, quiet man named Marcus Reyes, that Daniel had been meeting privately with 2 of my board members, building a case, painting a picture of a founder who was erratic, overspending, mentally unfit to lead. The plan: get the board to force me out, install Daniel in my place. Daniel had hired a private investigator to dig through my finances, hoping to find some transaction he could twist into proof. Instead, the investigator found something Daniel never meant for anyone to see. Records showing my father had been quietly draining a family trust for 18 months, moving money into a shell company Daniel controlled. $2,300,000. Money that included my own inheritance and my late grandmother's estate. They weren't just trying to take my company. They were trying to bury what they'd already stolen. And my company was the perfect cover story. I sat across from Marcus in his office. The documents spread between us, my hands shaking. "They're not just coming after Databridge," I said. "They're coming after me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "Call your parents," Marcus said, leaning forward, his voice low and deliberate. "Tell them Databridge lost $20 million in a failed acquisition. Tell them the company's in serious trouble. Tell them you need their help." I stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Why would I hand them ammunition? You just showed me they're already circling." "That's exactly why." Marcus tapped the folder between us. "Right now, in their minds, you're a threat. A daughter with $90 million and no interest in giving them control. Threats get attacked carefully, quietly, with lawyers and board meetings. But the moment they think you're weak worth pitying instead of stealing from, they'll stop being careful. They'll show you exactly who they are, on the record. In their own words, I remember the silence in that office, the hum of the air conditioning, my own heartbeat in my ears. You want me to lie to my own parents, I said slowly, so they'll incriminate themselves. I want you, Marcus said, to stop being the only honest person in this family. I made the call that night. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I dialed. When my mother picked up, my voice cracked not from acting, but from years of exhaustion finally catching up to me all at once. Mom, I said, I need to tell you something. The acquisition, it fell through. We lost $20 million. Investor money. The board's furious. I might lose the company. There was a pause on the other end. A pause that lasted 1 second too long. Oh, Claire, she finally said, and underneath the practiced sympathy in her voice, I heard something else. Something that sounded almost like relief. That's when I knew Marcus was right. 2 days later, Daniel walked into my office unannounced. He didn't hug me. He didn't ask how I was holding up. He set a leather folder on my desk and slid it toward me with 2 fingers, like he was closing a deal, not consoling his sister. I know this is hard, he said, so I made it easy. A restructuring agreement. I step in as CEO. Stabilize investor confidence. And you keep your equity. Your title, founder. Everyone wins. I opened the folder slowly. It wasn't a lifeline. It was a full transfer of majority control, buried under language about temporary stabilization and shareholder confidence measures. Attached to it was a press release, already drafted, dated for the following Monday. Daniel Whitfield steps in as CEO amid data bridge turmoil. They'd written a press release before I'd even finished crying on the phone. You drafted this, I said quietly, before I called Mom, before I told anyone about the 20 million. Daniel hesitated just half a second, but I caught it. We've been planning contingencies for months, he said. This isn't personal, Claire. It's business. It's my company. It's family money. He snapped, the mask slipping for the first time. Dad built the foundation you started with. You act like you did this alone. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in front of my brother. I felt something colder, clearer. Leave the folder, I said. I'll have my lawyer review it. He smiled the same smile he had at 9 years old, standing next to my father while I held a trophy nobody looked at. Smart, he said. I always knew you were the smart one, just not smart enough to run this alone. He left. I sat there for a long time after the door closed, staring at that folder, at that press release with tomorrow's date already printed on it. Then I picked up the phone and called Marcus. Play me the recording, I said. All of it. What Daniel didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Connecticut is a one-party consent state. As long as I was part of the conversation, I was legally allowed to record it. Marcus had advised me on exactly how to stay within that line. And over the following weeks, whenever Daniel or my father wanted to talk business, I made sure I was the one holding the phone. It wasn't wall-to-wall surveillance, it was 3 separate conversations, each one a little more careless than the last, because they thought they were talking to someone too broken to fight back. On one of them, Daniel described how they'd moved to remove her from operational control before she has time to explain herself to the board. On another, my father admitted the acquisition story wasn't really why they wanted the takeover, that it was simply the excuse they'd been waiting for. None of it was a smoking gun on its own, but combined with the trust records the investigator had turned up, Marcus said we had something a lot more useful than proof of a bad family. We had a timeline, motive, opportunity, and their own words describing both. I let Daniel believe he'd won. I signed nothing, but I let the silence stretch for a week. Long enough for him to get comfortable. Long enough for my father to start telling people at the club that his son was taking over the family business. Then I called an emergency board meeting. The boardroom was full. All 9 members plus Daniel, who walked in already acting like he owned the room. My father sat beside him, arms crossed, wearing the expression of a man who thought this meeting was a formality. I stood at the head of the table with Marcus beside me. My voice didn't shake this time. 2 weeks ago, I said, I told my family DataBridge lost $20 million. That was a lie. I told it because I needed to know what my family would do if they thought I was weak. Now I'm going to show you exactly what they did. I played the recording. Daniel's voice filled the room. Before she has time to explain herself to the board, my father's voice, cold and clinical. The acquisition story doesn't matter. What matters is that the board acts before she can rally support. You could hear a pin drop. I watched two board members, the ones Daniel had been quietly courting, go pale, then start gathering their things before the meeting had even ended. The vote wasn't close. Daniel was barred permanently from any future role at DataBridge. The two compromised board members resigned within the hour, before formal removal proceedings could even begin. The trust matter took longer, these things always do. Marcus connected me with a litigation firm that specialized in fiduciary fraud, and over the following weeks they built the civil complaint against my father, breach of fiduciary duty, and an accounting of where the missing $2.3 million had gone. Once my cousins found out their share of our grandmother's estate had quietly vanished into Daniel's shell company, they didn't hesitate to join the suit. The recordings and the investigators' financial trail became exhibits, not headlines filed with the court, reviewed by lawyers on both sides for months. Long before anything became public, my father didn't say a word. He just stared at me across that table. And for the first time in 31 years, I watched him realize he couldn't talk his way out of something. He called me exactly once after that. Not to apologize, to negotiate. This lawsuit will destroy this family's name, he said. Everything we've built, everything I've built for you children. You didn't build anything for me, I said. You built a story where Daniel was the son who mattered and I was the daughter who got lucky. I believed that story for 30 years, Dad. I don't believe it anymore. What do you want, Claire? Money? An apology? Name it. I don't want your money back with interest, I said. I don't want an apology your lawyers write for you to read off a page. I want the truth on record permanently, so no one in this family can ever again call me the unstable one, the ungrateful one. The problem. He went quiet, and in that silence, I finally understood something I'd spent my whole life waiting to hear, and never would. I have to go, Dad, I said, and I hung up first. For the first time ever, I hung up first. The settlement became public a year and a half later. My father resigned from 3 community boards. Daniel's name quietly became radioactive across Connecticut's finance circles. Nobody wants a partner who tried to defraud his own sister's company and lie to a boardroom to do it. My mother, to this day, has never apologized. She still tells people I overreacted. DataBridge Analytics is worth over $200 million now. I run it exactly the way I always have, without a co-CEO, without a family advisor, without anyone who mistook my kindness for weakness. People ask if I regret how it ended. A family fractured, a lawsuit that made headlines, relationships that will never be repaired. I don't. Because the moment my lawyer told me to say I'd lost $20 million, what he was really telling me was this: show them who they are when they think you have nothing left. Then make sure they can never take anything from you again. I never lost $20 million, but my family lost something they can never get back the chance to pretend, ever again, that they didn't know exactly what they were doing.